The American Civil War was the bloodiest conflict in American history. From 1861 to 1865, a nation divided over slavery and states' rights tore itself apart in 4 years of devastating warfare. Over 620,000 Americans died, roughly 2% of the entire population at the time. Thanks to advanced AI software, we can now restore these historical scenes with unprecedented clarity. By analysing actual Civil War photographs and contemporary engravings, many created by eyewitnesses on the battlefield, we're able to show how these pivotal moments unfolded, bringing to life the battles and people who fought to preserve or divide the Union. It all started in 1860. Abraham Lincoln was elected president on a platform opposing the expansion of slavery. Southern states, fearing he would eventually abolish slavery entirely, began seceding from the Union to form their own nation, the Confederate States of America. Lincoln refused to accept this division, insisting the Union was permanent and indivisible. When Confederate forces fired on a federal fort in April 1861, 4 years of devastating warfare began. This is Fort Sumter in Charleston Harbor, South Carolina, on April 12, 1861. You're witnessing the opening bombardment of the Civil War. South Carolina demands that federal troops abandon this fort on their soil. When Major Robert Anderson refuses, Confederate General P.G.T. Beauregard orders his batteries to open fire. You're seeing exploding shells and smoke engulf the brick fortress as Confederate gunners pound the walls with cannon fire. The pre-dawn sky lights up with artillery flashes and the arc of mortar shells raining down. Inside, Anderson's garrison of fewer than 90 men returns fire, but they're hopelessly outnumbered. After 36 hours of bombardment, Anderson surrenders. You're seeing the interior of Fort Sumter just after. Confederate soldiers raising their battle flag above the shattered walls. Remarkably, no soldiers died in combat. The only casualties occurred when a gun exploded during the surrender salute. Fort Sumter's fall rallied both sides to arms. Lincoln called for 75,000 volunteers to suppress the rebellion. 4 more southern states seceded in response, bringing the Confederacy to 11 states. The war both sides expected to end in months was about to begin. This is Henry House Hill near Manassas, Virginia, on July 21, 1861. Both North and South rushed to prepare armies after Fort Sumter. Now, just 3 months later, Union General Irvin McDowell has marched 18,000 troops south to crush the rebellion with one decisive battle. Many Northern civilians followed the army, expecting to watch a quick victory before returning to Washington for dinner. You're witnessing the battle's climax. Lines of Union and Confederate troops clash in fierce combat amid dense smoke. In the center, you're seeing the 69th New York Irish Brigade charging with bayonets fixed toward a Confederate battery on the hill. But the Confederate line is holding. General Thomas Jackson stands firm, earning his nickname Stonewall. While Confederate reinforcements pour in from the Shenandoah Valley, the Union attack falters. You're seeing the chaotic retreat. Panicked Union soldiers, supply wagons, and those civilian spectators clogging the road back to Washington in complete disorder. Confederate cavalry harass the fleeing army as wagons overturn and men throw away their weapons to run faster. By day's end, nearly 5,000 men are casualties. Union 2,700, Confederate 2,000. The shocking defeat shattered Northern expectations of a short war. Both sides now realized this conflict would be long and bloody. The Confederacy, defending its home territory with skilled generals like Lee and Jackson, had won the first major battle. But the North, with vastly superior population and industrial resources, was only beginning to mobilize. This is Antietam Creek near Sharpsburg, Maryland, on September 17, 1862. By the fall of 1862, Confederate General Robert E. Lee has decided on a bold strategy: invade the North. If he can win a major battle on Union soil, European nations might recognize the Confederacy and broker peace. Lee's army crossed into Maryland in early September with 40,000 men. Union General George McClellan intercepted him here with 75,000 troops. You're witnessing the single bloodiest day in American history. At dawn, Union forces attacked. You're seeing troops of the Iron Brigade in their black hats charging through Miller's cornfield toward the White Dunker Church, bayonets fixed as smoke rolls across the field. Men fall in rows as musket fire cuts them down. By midday, the fighting shifted to a sunken farm road that became known as Bloody Lane. You're seeing the aftermath, Confederate soldiers lying piled where they fell during hours of brutal fighting. Their bodies are strewn along the trench, swollen and still. This photograph by Alexander Gardner, taken days after the battle, was among the first to show Americans the true horror of war. By nightfall, over 22,000 men are casualties, roughly 12,000 Union, 10,000 Confederate. Though tactically inconclusive, Lee's battered army retreated back to Virginia. His invasion had failed. More importantly, the Union's strategic victory gave President Lincoln what he'd been waiting for: a battlefield success that would allow him to issue the Emancipation Proclamation without appearing desperate. 5 days later, Lincoln announced that on January 1st, 1863, all enslaved people in Confederate states would be declared free. This is the White House on January 1st, 1863. President Lincoln is signing the Emancipation Proclamation, surrounded by his cabinet. You're seeing the moment that transformed the war's purpose. Initially, Lincoln had fought to preserve the Union, not to end slavery. He feared that making abolition a war goal would drive border states like Kentucky and Maryland into the Confederacy. But after Antietam gave him political capital, Lincoln changed the war's character. The proclamation declared free all enslaved people in Confederate states still in rebellion. Though it freed few slaves immediately, it only applied to territory the Union didn't yet control. It fundamentally altered the conflict. This was no longer just a fight to preserve the Union. It was now a war against slavery itself. The proclamation discouraged Britain and France from recognizing the Confederacy, as European public opinion strongly opposed slavery. It also invited black men to join the Union Army. By war's end, nearly 200,000 black soldiers and sailors would serve the Union cause, providing crucial manpower. The Confederacy now faced an existential threat. Union victory would mean the end of slavery and the social order the South had seceded to protect. This is Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, in early July 1863. Despite Antietam's setback, Lee has launched a second invasion of the North in the summer of 1863. If he can win a major victory on Union soil, he might still force Lincoln to negotiate peace. Lee's 75,000 men march into Pennsylvania, while Union General George Meade moves 90,000 troops to intercept him. The armies collide at the small town of Gettysburg on July 1st. For 3 days they battle across fields and hills surrounding the town. You're seeing the aftermath at Trosel Farm. Dozens of dead artillery horses from the 9th Massachusetts Battery lying where they fell on July 2nd. The shell-pierced barn stands in the background. Union batteries fought desperately here to hold the line. On July 3rd, Lee makes a fateful decision. You're seeing pickets charge. Nearly 15,000 Confederate troops advancing across 3/4 of a mile of open ground toward the Union center on Cemetery Ridge. General Winfield Hancock's Union forces are firing point blank. Artillery erupts with canister shot. The foreground is littered with fallen soldiers. Confederate battle flags wave through the smoke, but the assault is doomed. Union fire tears massive gaps in their lines. The charge fails catastrophically. Fewer than half the Confederates return. Total casualties for 3 days reach 51,000, 23,000 Union, 28,000 Confederate. Lee's army retreats back to Virginia, never to invade the North again. The same week, far to the west, Union General Ulysses S. Grant captures Vicksburg on the Mississippi River, splitting the Confederacy in two. From this point forward, the South is losing. The question is no longer if the Union will win, but when and at what cost. This is Atlanta, Georgia, in November 1864. By 1864, Union strategy has evolved. General Ulysses S. Grant, now commanding all Union armies, has adopted a strategy of total war, not just defeating Confederate armies, but destroying the South's ability to wage war at all. In the West, General William Sherman has captured Atlanta after a brutal summer campaign. You're seeing the city in ruins. The wrecked railroad depot and roundhouse lie in charred rubble, where vital Confederate rail facilities once stood. Twisted iron and burned timber are all that remain. Black smoke hangs over the devastated skyline. Before marching to the sea, Sherman's forces systematically destroyed Atlanta's military and industrial infrastructure. From November 15th to December 21st, his 62,000 troops marched 285 miles to Savannah, cutting a 60-mile-wide path of destruction through Georgia's heartland. They destroyed railroads, burned plantations and military supplies, and liberated an estimated 20,000 enslaved people. Savannah surrendered without a fight. Sherman's march demonstrated that the Confederacy could no longer protect its own territory. The psychological impact was devastating. Southern civilians realized their cause was lost. The campaign helped ensure Lincoln's re-election in November 1864, ending any hope the South had of a negotiated peace. By early 1865, the Confederacy was collapsing. Grant's armies had Lee trapped in Virginia, supplies were running out, and Confederate soldiers were deserting by the thousands. This is Appomattox Courthouse, Virginia, on April 9, 1865. After nearly 4 years of war, it's finally ending. General Lee's Army of Northern Virginia, once the Confederacy's most formidable force, is surrounded, starving, and outnumbered 3-1. With no possibility of escape, Lee has requested a meeting with Union General Ulysses S. Grant to discuss surrender terms. You're seeing the parlor of Wilmer McLean's house where the two generals meet. Lee, dressed in his finest grey uniform with ceremonial sword, stands with dignified resignation. Grant, mud-splattered in a simple field uniform, gestures courteously that Lee may keep his sidearm and horse. Around them stand officers from both sides, observing in respectful silence. You're seeing Grant writing out the surrender terms by hand at a small table. The terms are generous. Lee's 28,000 soldiers will be paroled and allowed to return home. They can keep their horses for spring planting. No trials for treason, no imprisonment. Grant wants reconciliation, not revenge. Within weeks, other Confederate armies surrender across the South. By May, the war is effectively over. The Union is preserved as one indivisible nation. The 13th Amendment, ratified in December 1865, abolishes slavery throughout the United States. 4 million formerly enslaved people gain their freedom. The cost has been staggering. Over 620,000 Americans dead, the South's economy in ruins, and scars that will take generations to heal. But the fundamental questions have been answered. The United States is one nation, indivisible, and slavery has no place in it. History has left us countless photographs and paintings from pivotal moments throughout time. Tell us in the comments, which historical event would you like to see revived next? Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.